Listen, if you're famous, I don't care how old you are, you don't take nude pictures of yourself
because
wants
to share with one person.
Harvey Weinstein is spending his first night in custody after being found guilty of rape. And look, that's the walker Weinstein has been using throughout this trial being wheeled out of court. Weinstein was not placed in a jail cell.
Thank my barristers Brendan Kelly and Stephen Toll, my solicitors Joe McVeigh and Kevin Winters of KRW Law.
We're grateful to the jury for reaching what was a common...
Not once but twice, correct? Both feet?
Hello everybody, I hope you're all well. So today's video is going to be all about why men hate women still. They never stopped. From the title, this video does sound like it's going to be very antagonizing, and it kind of is. I'm mostly going to be talking about modern forms of misogyny in the 21st century and why we do still need feminism. Unfortunately, a lot of people are under the impression, both men and women, that we don't need feminism anymore. That feminism is basically rendered useless in the 21st century because of how far women's rights have come. But I want to debunk this myth and just set a few points, and this is literally just a few out of many, of why we do still need feminism in the 21st century. And I am more than aware that women's rights have come forward absolute leaps and bounds in this country. I am very grateful and fortunate to live in a country where women's rights have progressed so much compared to other countries, but just because women's rights have progressed so much in this country doesn't mean we could not and should not point out problems which still exist within the patriarchy. And I am also more than aware that this does not apply to every single man that exists, but I think not only just in men but in women as well, in all of us really. Misogyny has been so ingrained into our heads from such a young age that it is really difficult to unlearn misogynistic habits. Even I still to this day find myself being internally misogynistic, and I do think most women will agree with me on this point, that in my whole lifetime, my whole 22 years of being alive on this planet, I have only met 3 straight men who aren't misogynistic in any way, I don't think. Which has always confused me, because isn't the whole point of being a straight man that you're meant to like women? So that is what I'm going to be doing in today's video. I'm going to be talking about how misogyny manifests itself in different ways in the 21st century and how a lot of people tend to not notice that it's misogyny. I've got 4 examples that I'm using today. There is also going to be a part 2 to this video where I'm talking all about internalized misogyny, so if you aren't subscribed, make sure you are so you don't miss the second part. So the first example we have is slut shaming. This is not anything new, this has been spoken about before. Everyone knows that there is a huge double standard when it comes to promiscuity in men versus promiscuity in women. We've all heard of it before, but I am just going to quickly explain it for the sake of this video. Basically, when a man is promiscuous and sleeps around, they are seen as a stud and a player, and in particular they are seen as extremely masculine by other men. And meanwhile, if a woman is promiscuous and sleeps around, they are seen as a slut or whore, in some cases even dirty, used goods. Guys don't want to go there with a girl that's easy, etc. And already we can see how these double standards can actually be harmful towards men as well, because so many men, a majority of men I think, put their self-value into how much sex they have and how much women find them attractive, because there is this huge pressure to get laid and be sexually active. And for men that don't have a lot of sex and aren't very sexually active, it can lead to very low self-esteem and a very warped perception of themselves. I'm pretty convinced that this whole the more women you sleep with, the more masculine you are, I am pretty sure led to the whole incel movement and that big steaming hot pile of shit that I will cover another day. Now don't get me wrong, there are actually people out there who are turned off by men who are particularly promiscuous or sleep around or very sexually active. attractive, but it really isn't that many, especially compared to how many men are turned off by women who are very sexually active and promiscuous. Sorry, quick break, I had to take my clips out because they were making my forehead look absolutely gigantic. Anyways, I know so many women who would happily date men with high body counts and they genuinely do not care. I know girls in my personal life whose boyfriends' body counts are 100 plus and they literally did not care, or the only part they cared about was that they would get the beat and delete treatment. And as I said earlier, with women it is a completely different story. If you are promiscuous, you are seen as a slut or whore, the town bike, easy, not wife material, etc. The list goes on, and it's not just men who slut shame women, women slut shame women too. I used to do it when I was younger and that's really embarrassing to even think about. But also it's not just the amount of people that women sleep with that they get shamed for, it's how long they wait to sleep with someone. For example, someone could have what they consider a low body count, but if they've perhaps had a few one-night stands or they slept with someone after a first date, oh, that's slutty. Women are slut shamed for their kinks if they like consensual rough sex, BDSM, out of the norm kinks. They're either letting men disrespect them or they have no respect for themselves, apparently. Women are even slut shamed for the way they dress. Yes, some outfits can be considered slutty. I have no idea how an outfit can show how sexually promiscuous you are, to be honest. Another problem related to slut shaming is leaking sex and nudes. More often than not, it is a man leaking a picture or a video of a woman, and more often than not, rather than the man being held responsible for leaking a video or a picture which they weren't supposed to, which they were trusted with, etc., the woman is criticised for sending it in the first place. You shouldn't have sent that kind of picture or video anyway if you knew the risk, blah blah blah. As far as I'm aware, most women only send pictures and videos to people that they genuinely trust, so they never send it thinking that the person would leak it or send it on, etc. Also, some of the time men will literally coerce these pictures and pressure these women to send pictures to them. When you're sending videos and pictures, yeah, you know the risk, but you genuinely trust the person that you are sending them to, and you genuinely think they wouldn't do that to you. So the man completely violates the woman's trust, embarrasses her and humiliates her, and somehow it's the woman's fault. It's like blaming someone for getting hit by a car when crossing the road using a zebra crossing, for example. A car driving through a zebra crossing when a pedestrian is going to cross it is illegal, the same way that leaking sex and nudes is also illegal. But there is still that risk when you use a zebra crossing that a car or a bus can just go zooming past and hit you. But if that does happen, who do you blame? The driver, who should have been following the law, or the person who took the risk and crossed the road? Another example of slut shaming is when men cheat on their wives and have affairs with other women, etc. It's often the mistress that gets the brunt of the anger and not the cheating husband. Not that much of the anger is directed towards the cheating husband, the only person who has the loyalties in this situation. The person who is literally married cheating on their wife. There are so many examples of this happening in celebrity and influencer culture, but I will just list a few. More recently, there was some pictures of Dominic West and Lily James which were taken by paparazzi, which were posted on Twitter when they were in Italy. There wasn't any pictures of them like explicitly kissing each other, but they were definitely very cozy, and because Dominic West is a married man, it was extremely inappropriate. But when this all came out, it wasn't Dominic West, the married man, that was trending on Twitter, it was Lily James, and everyone calling her a slut. Everyone was bad-mouthing Lily James, the single woman, not Dominic West, the married man. And now, I'm not trying to advocate to go for married men or to become a mistress, because to be honest, I think I think all women can do better than a married man, to be honest. But it is very common when affairs are revealed that the wife will go after the mistress rather than her cheating husband. Another very well-known example of this was the Jordyn Woods and Tristan Thompson situation. This does slightly differ because Jordyn Woods did have loyalty loyalties to the family, you know, so both of them were in the wrong. But people went in so hard on Jordyn Woods, and Khloe Kardashian even took back her cheating. I can't remember if it was her boyfriend or her husband, but she took him back and didn't forgive Jordyn, and I'm pretty sure she called her fat as well. It's just like, you can't forgive one and then not forgive the other. And what's even more ridiculous about slut shaming is if you are very sexually active and you have a lot of casual sex and you're very promiscuous, you're considered a slut. But if you're a virgin, you're considered prude and boring. So either way, you literally cannot win. And like I've said before, the term slut is not just used by men, it is very often used by women as well. I remember there was this weird trend, like I believe it was about 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure I made one as well, which is so embarrassing to think about. And it was people holding up placards saying like, hey girl, did you know your skirt goes over your ass, or something like that. And it was loads of girls doing it. 2012 was a wild time. But like I said, I will elaborate more on internalized misogyny in the second part to this video. Personally, I don't think there is any such thing as a slut. I think the term slut has been weaponized against women to shame them for their sexual activity, when we all know that your sexual activity does not make any difference to your worth as a person. And most of us know that regardless of whether you fit the term slut or not, men and women will use that insult and throw it in your face. It's a very common insult to use when you turn down a man. They'll call you a fat slut, an ugly slag, etc. Literally happened to me the other day. A majority of misogyny is rooted in jealousy, and a majority of men's misogyny is rooted in the fact that they can't get the women that they want. So they will throw misogynistic terms like slut and slag in your face just because they feel emasculated. Now I'm going to leave it at that when it comes to slut shaming. I know there is so much more to say, so I will link down below a few articles which I used to research for this, and some more if you guys want to know more about it, but obviously I want to try and cover as many things as I can in this video. I'm following up with slut shaming with treatment of sex workers, or rather the mistreatment of sex workers, because the two very much go hand in hand. The term sex worker is really an umbrella term for a broad amount of jobs. It can be anything from cam girls, OnlyFans girls, strippers, prostitutes, porn stars, etc. And there is an extremely long history of men mistreating sex workers despite them being their main consumers. And also, if you guys didn't know, sex work is one of the only industries that is mostly female dominated. Women get paid the most, women get the most work, etc. Now, I'm not going to be focusing on porn stars or strippers or prostitutes today. If you guys want to know more about legalization when it comes to prostitution, I recommend checking out my video about OnlyFans and sex work. We all know that men mistreat those women despite them being their largest consumers, but a more modern, more recent phenomenon has been the treatment of OnlyFans workers online. It's something which is very new, and it's something which I find very interesting, so I'm going to talk about it. The biggest critics of sex workers, surprisingly, or I guess unsurprisingly, is incels. I find really interesting because incels are men who are so desperate to have an intimate relationship with a woman and to have sex with her that they literally hate every single woman that rejects them. So you think that they would actually like sex workers because sex workers are providing them with the opportunity to have sex, but no, they hate them because they hate any woman ever, and especially they hate women who manage to profit from their attractiveness. If you guys don't know what OnlyFans is, it is a subscription website where people will pay a certain amount a month to access exclusive content, and because OnlyFans has very relaxed rules and regulations, it is mostly used by sex workers, in particular female sex workers, and they can post really anything on there. They can post lingerie photos, videos, tapes, pictures, nudes, etc. And the top OnlyFans creators make bank, and by bank I mean bank. I'm talking, some of these girls are making upwards of $10,000 a month from OnlyFans. They're doing amazing. And because of the extremely negative stigma that OnlyFans and sex work in general has, these women are very vocal about how much they earn. almost as a way to be like, hey, I'm doing this for a reason, by the way, look how much money I'm making, or hey, the person that's trying to slag me off for doing sex work, look how much money I'm making, up yours. And I don't really blame them for this, to be honest. And of course, with any line of sex work, I do recommend that women who do want to do it, make sure you actually think through the repercussions of what you're going to do, and make sure it's actually something that you want to do and not just something where you think that you're gonna make quick money out of it. But OnlyFans is one of the safest and least exploitative forms of sex work out there. These women are in complete control of what content they create and distribute. It is extremely difficult to be exploited on OnlyFans because you are your own boss. Unlike other forms of sex work such as stripping, porn and prostitution, where it is very, very easy to be exploited. If anything, we should be celebrating OnlyFans because it is one of the safest and least exploitative forms of sex work, but unfortunately a lot of people, mostly men, get extremely heated over the topic. It's either OnlyFans girls have it easy, they don't deserve the money they're making, they sell their nudes for X amount of money, that's disgusting, they're sluts, their fathers should be ashamed of themselves, they're never gonna get a boyfriend because I'd never date someone with an OnlyFans. Their mentions will literally be full of men abusing them just because they're sex workers. Very recently, one woman, I didn't manage to grab her Twitter handle, so if anyone knows it, then please leave a comment so I can stick it in the description. She posted on Twitter that she had bought her first ever apartment using money she made from OnlyFans, and the tweet gained quite a lot of attention. I believe it had around 50 to 100,000 likes, and basically a load of men reported her account, so it got deleted just because they were so fuming that a woman managed to make enough money to buy an apartment from OnlyFans earnings. Are you being serious? Grow up. Also, another thing I want to tackle is the whole I would never date someone with an OnlyFans. This may be a controversial opinion, I don't think so. There is nothing wrong if you don't want to date a sex worker. If that's something that you would not prefer to do, that's fine. But what isn't fine is getting all up in sex workers' mentions saying, oh, I could never date a sex worker, that's disgusting. Because, like, who asked? Also, I don't think she'd ever date you anyway. I mean, did you really ever have a chance with this sex worker? Let's be real, probably not. And another thing, these men who will abuse and tweet sex workers all the time because they hate sex workers, that they're disappointments, their fathers should be ashamed of them, they don't deserve the money they earn, etc. If you are so bothered by sex workers, if genuinely, if women making money on OnlyFans boils your blood so much, you do realise the mute button exists. You can literally just mute them and it won't bother you ever again. And if I'm going to be completely honest, obviously I think hatred towards sex workers is deeply rooted in misogyny, but mostly I think it's rooted in jealousy. I think that these men are extremely jealous that they cannot profit off their bodies the same way that women can, and they can't deal with just one industry that is female dominated. And also I don't think they can deal with the fact that OnlyFans has finally given women the option to do sex work without being exploited or abused. And also they're probably attracted to them on top of that. So it's all those factors combined, to be honest. So now I'm going to be talking about the false rape accusation argument, and I know some of you guys are going to say rape is not just something which affects women, and I'm more than aware of that, but I'm just going to read out some statistics for you guys. 91% of rapes are committed against women and 9% are committed against men, and a majority of the time they are being attacked by a man. Obviously the statistics for men being raped is probably a lot higher because men are very reluctant to report it. Most people are reluctant to report it anyway, but men are quite reluctant as well because of toxic masculinity, etc. More women are affected by rape than men. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that men aren't affected at all, because I know that is, but it is an issue which does affect women quite a lot. I'd probably say the false accusation argument is one of the most common forms of misogyny in the 21st century, in particular on social media. And what I mean by this is a lot of people, in particular men, shock, when discussions or conversations of rape come about, which is obviously a very difficult topic for people to talk about, the first thing that these people will say is, what about girls who lie? And one thing I just want to say, ladies and gents, if you're seeing someone and this conversation comes up and the first thing they say is what about girls or people who lie, run in the other direction. Huge red flag, zoom, go, run, just go, get out of there. Also, people who argue this point of what about girls who lie, it really isn't that much of a groundbreaking point as you think it is. Firstly, and a lot of us do know this, rape is notoriously difficult to get a conviction for. Firstly, you'll need DNA evidence, and a lot of people will not report their assaults until days, months, years after it's happened because they're just trying to process everything. A lot of people don't realise that they've been sexually assaulted until years after it's happened. And even if there is DNA evidence, you have to try and prove to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that it was a non-consensual encounter. And this is particularly difficult to do because the defence can just say, oh, well, she was consenting. And this is especially difficult to prove if it started out as a consensual encounter and then turned non-consensual. Not all assaults are extremely violent. Not all assaults leave bruises, marks, cuts, etc. And even if they do, there is something called the rough sex defence, where people can just say that it was consensual BDSM or rough kinky sex. And even if there is a lot of evidence to suggest guilt, they still may not be convicted. Now I'm going to read this from my notes because it's quite difficult to get out. So one example of this being there was a trial of 4 Irish rugby players. 2 were found not guilty of rape and the other 2 were cleared of exposure and perverting the courts of justice, despite there being evidence to suggest that all 4 of them were guilty, which ended up leading to the I Believe Her campaign, which I will leave a few links if you guys want to know more information about it. But examples of this and failed convictions really put people off from reporting their assaults in the first place. So as you can tell from all of these factors, successful rape convictions are extremely difficult to come by. So to argue that we should only believe women once it gets proved in court is absolutely ridiculous, or that the accuser is a straight up liar unless it gets proven in court is again absolutely ridiculous. If you guys didn't know, rape convictions have fallen to an all-time low in England and Wales. I will just read out some statistics. Between 2019 to 2020, police recorded 55,130 rapes in England and Wales, but there was only 2,102 prosecutions, so only around 2,000 cases got even taken to court, and only 1,439 convictions, which means around 98% of rapes that got reported went with no conviction. So because 98% of rapes in England and Wales go without a conviction, does that mean that 98% of people who reported are liars? Of course not. Absolutely not. And another thing which gets posted on social media a lot, in particular on Twitter, and will literally get tens and thousands of likes and retweets, and it is, girls who falsely accuse men of rape should go to prison. First of all, there is such a small amount of cases that end up being false accusations. Only around 4% in the UK and 2 to 6% in America and Europe. And second of all, shouldn't we be focusing on getting rapists in prison first, being as the conviction rate is only around 2% in England and Wales this year? Why focus on such a minor problem? And also there is already ways which you can press charges against false rape accusers despite there really being not that many at all. It's literally called suing for slander and defamation of character. And also you need to be extremely careful when legal systems have ways of pressing charges against false rape accusers, because these legal systems can be very easily abused by corrupt police forces. One example of this actually happened this year. Well, last year, a British woman in Cyprus reported being allegedly gang raped by 12 men. There was a lot of evidence to suggest that this was true. Now, I need to be extremely careful with the way I'm talking here because I'm not trying to get sued, but I will leave a link down below to the Wikipedia of the case, because once you read up on it, you realise there is a lot of evidence to suggest that this woman was telling the truth. And there was also evidence to suggest that the investigation was extremely corrupt. The woman decided to retract her statement and sign a statement to say that she was lying after 7 hours of interrogation. It seems obvious from what I could hear was that she was just desperate to get herself out of that situation. We all know that several hour-long interrogations can put a huge toll on your psyche. Several hour interrogations have literally led to people falsely confessing to crimes that they have not even committed after they have been interrogated for hours on end, because they will literally do anything for it to be over. But after the woman retracted her statements after 7 hours of interrogation, the Cypriot authorities decided to press charges against her for fabricating the claims, and she received a suspended sentence in January. And as you guys can see, when there are ways of pressing charges against false accusers, they can so easily be abused by corrupt police forces. Now, the last thing I'm going to be talking about is himpathy. I asked you guys over on my Instagram for what modern forms of misogyny you have experienced yourself, and a few of you guys actually messaged me about the term himpathy, and in particular how the term himpathy relates to the Tory Lanez Megan Thee Stallion situation. Quick public service announcement: I literally found out the day after I filmed this that it's actually pronounced Tory Lanez. Wow, I had no idea. I never listened to his music anyway, but yeah, no, so I say Tory Lanez instead of Tory Lanez for this entire video, which is an extremely embarrassing moment for me in my career. But anyways, enjoy. If you guys don't know the Tory and Megan situation, Tory Lanez, who's a famous male rapper, shot Megan Thee Stallion, who is a famous female rapper, in both of her feet. When this incident first happened, there was no confirmation that Tory Lanez actually did it. It was just rumours that were sort of swirling around, and people genuinely wanted to know whether Tory Lanez was the person who shot Megan in both of her feet. So Megan went on Instagram Live and said, yes, it was Tory Lanez who shot me in both of my feet. Now, don't get me wrong, Megan did get an outpour of public support, like she should. She literally got shot in both of her feet, but she also got a load of criticism, mostly from men, shock, because apparently she was being a snitch, or it was people saying that, oh, there's two sides to every story. And one thing I want to know, if you think there's two sides to every story, I want to know if there's anything which makes it justifiable for a grown-ass man to shoot a woman in both of her feet. Please enlighten me, let me know. But something which also happened, which was quite odd, and this wasn't like a widespread thing, it just happened sort of in a few places, was some people were actually feeling sorry for Tory Lanez. They had sympathy for him about how this would affect his career, almost treating him like he was misunderstood in some way. And it turns out there is actually a nickname for this phenomenon, and it is called himpathy. The term himpathy was coined by Cornell professor Kate Mann, and it is defined as the inappropriate and disproportionate sympathy powerful men often enjoy in cases of sexual assault, intimate partner violence, homicide, and other misogynistic behaviour. So to define it simply, unfortunately, when men get revealed to be predators or violent towards their partners or violent towards people in general, rather than people focusing on the victim and what the victim has been through, people will focus on the man, the perpetrator, and how these accusations will affect them and their career. The emotions and perspectives of the men are centred, meanwhile the experience of the often woman is pushed to the side. And what I noticed when I was researching for this video was himpathy seems to be very intertwined with the false rape accusation argument, rather than people choosing to focus on the worryingly low conviction rate. Instead, we focus on the extremely minor problem of false accusations, a problem which a majority of the time affects men, despite only 2 to 6% of reports being false. So rather than focusing on the huge problem which affects women, people put a lot of their energy on the small minor problem which affects men. So in very well-known cases where powerful men are revealed to be predators, one example of this can be comedian Louis C.K. Louis C.K. performed his first ever stand-up 10 months after his accusations came to light, and of course his stand-up was met with a lot of criticism because this man is literally a predator. But there was a lot of people saying, he's been punished enough, he's served his time, let him move on, just because his predatory behaviour got revealed to the public. Apparently that's a punishment or not enough. Guess what? It isn't. If you're a literal predator, your actions being exposed to the public and making the tiniest dent in your career is nowhere near the punishment that you deserve. Another example of himpathy was the Brock Turner case. He got a 6-month prison sentence for raping an unconscious woman behind a dumpster, and the whole reason he got a shorter sentence was because the judge was worried about it affecting his swimming career. But a literal judge prioritised the emotions and career prospects of a literal rapist over the unconscious victim. And this is why it's so important to crack down on himpathy, because clearly the judge and jury have internalized this so much that they literally gave a rapist 6 months in prison so their career wasn't affected. And some of you guys may say in the comments that himpathy isn't a huge problem because why do we care about the opinions of random people on social media? But as you can see, himpathy can literally translate itself into the judicial system, so that's when we need to start cracking down on it. That's when it becomes a huge problem. And if anyone even wants to try and tell me that accusations and convictions ruin people's lives, I would just like us to take a long look at Roman Polanski. I rest my case. Now, conclusion, to conclude this video. Now, this was only a few small examples of modern day misogyny. I'm just going to go through them again very, very quickly. The first one being slut shaming and the huge double standard when it comes to men being promiscuous versus women being promiscuous. Men's mistreatment of sex workers, in particular sex workers online, which is a new phenomenon which is all rooted in misogyny and jealousy. The false rape accusations argument and people prioritising men possibly being falsely accused of rape rather than women who are actually raped. And on top of that, himpathy, people feeling excessive sympathy towards male abusers. And some of these may seem small and insignificant to you guys, but in the bigger picture, when you put it all together, all of these contribute to misogyny and keeping the patriarchy alive. And I think all of us, women included, need to take a step back and make sure that we aren't contributing in any way. And like I said before, there will be a second part to this video where I am focusing on internalized misogyny. So if you guys have any interesting, good websites, articles, examples, etc., my Twitter and my Instagram DMs are open, so message me on there. And also I started a Patreon if you guys want to support my channel. I want to try and get captions on as many of my videos as I can, so my Patreon will be linked down below. And yes, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I will see you guys soon for another one. Bye!